Flowers are the reproductive structures of angiosperms. This video will illustrate in particular the basic structures of a eudicot flower and the variety of pollination strategies utilized by angiosperms.
Eudicot flowers are composed of three main sections, which include the male and female reproductive systems and the perianth. The female part of the flower is referred to as the pistil and is composed of the stigma, the style, and the ovule. The stigma is the receptive tip of the pistil that is responsible for catching pollen. The style is the tube-shaped connection between the stigma and the ovule, which elevate the stigma to help catch pollen. And the ovule is the structure that contains the female reproductive cells, where after fertilization it will develop into a seed. Moving on, the male parts of the flower are collectively referred to as the stamen, and is made up of the anther and the filament. The anther is the pollen-producing organ of the flower, whereas the filament is the slender stalk that supports the anther. Last but not least, the perianth, which is the outer part of a flower, where in eudicot flowers, the perianth segments as well as the number of stamens are present in multiples of 4 or 5.
There are two major types of pollination that flowers go through, which are either through self-pollination or cross-pollination. Self-pollination is the transfer of pollen from the anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower of the same species, which results in uniform flowers. This also leads to plant production with less genetic diversity, since genetic material is replicated from the same plant. On the other hand, cross-pollination is the transfer of pollen from the anther of a flower to the stigma of a flower from another species, which results in imperfect flowers. This leads to greater genetic diversity, since genetic material is derived from different plants. Animals, such as bats, are attracted to the anthers of flowers that are full of edible nectar and pollen, which will often become stuck onto the animal's body. The pollen itself will sometimes fall into the stigma of another flower when the animal visits it as part of the pollination process. The flowers that birds pollinate tend to be in vibrant colours and are large in size so that birds are attracted to them. They are also long in length and are full of nectar for the birds to pollinate. Similar to birds, the flowers that insects pollinate have distinct colours and sometimes have ultraviolet streaks that humans cannot see with the naked eye. The model of the flower is designed for the insect to land easily onto the flower. In addition, certain flowers need a strong scent for the insect to be attracted, as the colours cannot be seen in the dark. Other flowers from grass and shrubs have a lot of their pollen picked up by the wind to be transported and distributed either onto neighbouring flowers or onto the ground. Hence, the inconsistent chances that a flower will be pollinated. Since the plants don't have petals, they rely on the sticky stamens from other flowers in order for the pollen to stick onto them. Sometimes, the pollen from plants like seagrass floats onto water and goes inside a neighbouring plant when in contact. This is the rarest type of pollination out of all the 5 mentioned.
Convergent evolution happening in angiosperms occur when plants that share the same kind of pollinator have evolved to share similar characteristics. For example, the flower color evolves in response to the visual system preferences of pollinators. To be specific, the pollinators, like the birds, are biased to those angiosperms which cover their favorite colors. After a certain period, the flowers were developed into particular colors in order to attract birds. A common example is there is bias towards a special shade of red in the color of Australian bird pollinated flowers. Another special example of pollination strategy is thermogenesis. Flowers and plants have the ability to generate heat as well as maintain a higher temperature than ambient environments, in an attempt to attract insects that are drawn towards carrion. Heat and warmth can serve as a way to protect the plant and also act as an energy reward system for pollinators. This promotes insect visitation and increases pollination activity.